Hello, welcome to episode 76 of the Epic Film Challenge 2, 1,001 movies you must see before you die. The Birth of a Nation. We're going back to the silent era, 1915, D.W. Griffith, one of the founding fathers of the modern film. You know, this is a director who was making these incredible films. I mean, go back to 1910, he made this short film, In the Border States, incredible short film. I love D.W. Griffith's filmmaking style. He really was ahead of his time. In the 1910s, he was making films that it feels like no one else was, and he really kind of was making the first steps towards modern filmmaking. I really do feel like that. The way that he told the story with his films was nothing short of ahead of its time. Now, The Birth of a Nation, I watched this a year ago during my Silent Movie Marathon 2, and I was going through that video to kind of refresh myself, because I didn't feel like watching the film again. It's a 3-hour long epic. I will watch it again at some point in my life, but this isn't a film I want to watch every year, and there's a very good reason why. As great as it is, the subject matter is tricky. But I was looking through my old review of it from last year. I mean, I spent a whole day with this film, watching it, kind of absorbing it, trying to kind of get my head around the things I was seeing in the film, which were very shocking to me, which I was prepared for, but nonetheless, it was a difficult watch. And I just figured, you know, I'm just going to be repeating the same things. I agreed with everything I said a year ago, last September. So what I'm going to do here is I'm literally just going to give you the review from Silent Movie Marathon 2. It's an edited review. There's pictures from the film. I talk about it in depth, and I talk about it for a while. So this is a bumper installment for this monumental film that's hailed as one of the best of all time. And I probably mention in the upcoming clip exactly what I think about this film and its place in film history. And once we get to the end, I'll come back here and give you my final verdict. But hopefully you don't mind that it's it's kind of recycled. But a lot of you probably haven't seen the Silent Movie Marathon 2, my 9-hour epic odyssey through silent films. So I think that it's worth just kind of taking that and putting it into this video here, which is going to be a long one. Be warned. And yeah, so I just agreed with everything I said, so you're going to see me suddenly sprout long hair and talk about this film for quite a while. So enjoy, and here we go. Here's past Luke talking about The Birth of a Nation as and when he saw it last year. Wow. D.W. Griffith was a bit of an anal control freak, it seems. There is no exception to this rule. My last name must be ruled with a borderline. Interesting, talking about the need to not censor art in the same way that the Bible and Shakespeare has, shows the dark side of life, I guess. Alright, here we go. 1915, The Birth of a Nation. Here we are, 100 years later. Adapted from Thomas Dixon's novel, The Klansman. Here we go. Alright, I'm about an hour into The Birth of a Nation. Just look at this. The scope of the battle scenes is absolutely incredible. Unbelievable in a way. I mean, it looks in some of these shots like they've mounted a camera like 200 feet in the air, like looking down and out towards the fields. I mean, it's just, the scope is ridiculous. Okay, maybe it doesn't look like that, but it, the height and the amount of people you see in the frame and how far the landscape goes on for. Incredible cinematography in terms of cramming all that stuff into the frame. And yeah, really quite powerful stuff, I would say, in terms of these battle scenes, when you're just seeing these bodies strewn about the battlefield, and people who are on opposing sides who don't really have anything against each other, but it's just war, and so you've got to do it. And it brings it back to me how just utterly pointless and terrible and horrific, and again, to reuse the word pointless, war really is. It's really sad. But the film itself so far, it's been quite hard to get into, for sure. How long are we into it now? About an hour and 4 minutes, so officially actually exactly a third of the way through the film. And now one of the main families is getting the news that one of their brothers, their son, has been killed in war. War, the breeder of hate. Yeah, it's definitely picking up the film, but I mean it opens up, and it was quite hard to follow some of the stuff that was going on. Again, I have no knowledge of the American Civil War or anything that goes along with it, why it happened, what the opposing sides were, and all that kind of stuff. So I had some Ryan Chataway commentary. I was talking to him on Facebook Messenger and asking him questions about the plot as I was going along the first 30-40 minutes of the film, and he kind of filled me in on some of the details about the Civil War and stuff like that, and I pieced together what was going on with the characters, just not the world around them, and kind of the politics of what was going on at the time. So we have the Stoneman family. I guess I'll kind of just do this review as I go along, because there's a lot to go through. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I'm trying to watch the film. I can pretty much keep an eye on it. It's pretty slow moving in the general scenes. But one of our main characters is now in the hospital, and he's about to meet a girl he's been kind of obsessing over for years. So we have two families: the Stoneman family from the north. I mean, it says they're in Washington and then Pennsylvania, and then down in South Carolina in the south you have the Cameron family, and the families are friends, and you see them visiting each other. But obviously they're on opposing sides of the Civil War, and so they eventually fight each other, and then war breaks out and starts and everything. And again, I'm still not too sure about the finer details of why this American Civil War is happening. It's to do with slavery and stuff like that. And we see Abraham Lincoln signing something, which again I wasn't too sure what was going on. And one of the Cameron boys has seen a picture of one of the Stoneman girls, Elsie, who's played by Lillian Gish. And Lillian Gish I've seen in another film before, another D.W. Griffith film, Broken Blossoms, where it's famously said that she invented screen acting in Broken Blossoms. There's no dialogue in this film, which I was very surprised by. It's all just kind of telling. Oh, there we go. Wow, the first line of dialogue. Though we had never met, I've carried you with me for a long, long time. Ben Cameron is now kind of admitting that he has a bit of a thing for Elsie, who's meeting him in the hospital, because she works at the hospital to kind of help out, I guess. And he's now showing her the picture that he kind of pretty much stole from one of the Stoneman brothers. So he's meeting her for the first time. I like that he has grown a mustache since he went off to war. It shows kind of the passage of time and stuff. I like little details like that. Let's turn it down a bit. And yeah, Lillian Gish, she is a very good actress. Found her a bit over the top at times in Broken Blossoms, but in the first act of Broken Blossoms she was incredible. So I'm looking forward to seeing what more she has to do in this film. She's been in quite a few scenes, but hasn't really had much to kind of do other than be there, really, and kind of be the object of his affections. Right, I'm going into that room to my boy. You may shoot if you want to. So Ben Cameron's mum is going in to see her son, who's critically injured at this point. And there was this great scene where he kind of charged across the battlefield and pretty much nearly died on the other side. But yeah, the battle scenes were incredible. They were breathtaking, just the way they were shot and stuff like that, and the kind of red tinting that was used during the night scenes, and you just see all these guns firing off, explosions going off left and right. I mean, incredibly impressive. D.W. Griffith obviously just wanted to go all out with this and make it seem as realistic as possible, and I have to admire that a lot, because it feels real. It feels like you're watching a documentary with some of these battle scenes. Just the amount of explosions going off, you just think that could not have been safe for the actors at all. But yeah, so there we go. That's the first third, the first hour and 4 minutes of The Birth of a Nation. You have kind of, I mean, the main thing really here is you're just following the two families and how their lives are being changed by this war, and then this kind of not the love affair, but kind of the infatuation that Ben Cameron has with Elsie Stoneman. So I wonder if that will kind of carry on throughout the film or not, because it's been kind of featured quite a fair amount so far. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm going to carry on watching as I have been. It's pretty easy to follow it along. I just had to stop a few times to read the intertitles. And yeah, another thing actually, before I forget these things, I said, when did I say? I think I said I think I said that in the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, it was the first time I'd seen scrolling text in an intertitle in a silent film. The opening of The Birth of a Nation had scrolling text, like the credits. It was a long credit list. There's a lot of actors in this film, so there we go. Like I said, never say that it's the first instance of anything. Here it is, 5 years earlier than Dr. Caligari. It was scrolling intertitles. We now have a scene with Abraham Lincoln, and yeah, I'm not really like enjoying this. I mean, the war scenes definitely got to me and impacted me on an emotional level, but and there's a few little scenes that made me smile and so on. But overall, you know, I just have to have such an admiration just for the sheer execution of this film so far. Really impressive, and we'll see what happens once the Ku Klux Klan gets involved. But you know, I am enjoying it. I'm glad that I'm sitting here watching this now, even if it's not kind of like blowing my socks off and it's not kind of giving me a non-stop entertainment ride, you know. I feel like it's an important film I'm watching, you know, both in terms of history and just in terms of the history of film itself. So, there we go. Anything else I can kind of add before I get going? Not really. So, on with the rest of the film. I'll probably film again once I get another hour and 4 minutes into the film, so that'll be 2 hours and 8 minutes, and I'll have another hour and 4 minutes to go, so let's soldier on. Alright, so I am halfway through, not halfway through, more than halfway through. I'm over 2 hours, over 2/3 into The Birth of a Nation, just over 2 hours into the movie, and I'm deep into part 2. The film is split into 2 halves. I believe there was an intermission when the film was first screened in 1915. And at this moment in time, the Civil War is over, and the characters in the film are dealing with the ramifications and the Reconstruction. That's what it's called, Part 2, the Reconstruction of America, I guess. And Ben Cameron, you know, probably one of the main characters of the film, is kind of upset about what's going on. The black people are kind of taking over and gaining more power, and he spots some children playing under a sheet. And he stands up, and the intertitle reads, "Inspiration, the result. The Ku Klux Klan, the organization that saved the South from the anarchy of black rule, but not without the shedding of more blood than at Gettysburg, according to Judge Torgey of the Carpetbaggers. The Ku Klux Klan, the organization that saved the South from the anarchy of black rule." Now, I really don't know what the facts are. I tried looking it up as I was watching the film, and couldn't really get anywhere with it. There's just so much information out there, so I asked Ryan to kind of sum it up for me, and you know, basically he told me that it's pretty much 100% fiction, the second part of the film, in terms of the Ku Klux Klan and you know, the stuff that happens. So that's a real shame to me, because I thought the first part was great, and so far I'm not really, I wouldn't say that the second part isn't made as well as the second part is still made brilliantly in terms of the, you know, the cinematic technique that D.W. Griffith clearly had a handle on at the time. It's made as good as the first part so far. It's just the content that is making me uncomfortable. And I just read a review from Roger Ebert, who gave it like 4 out of 4, included it in his great movies list, and said that for a long time he avoided it because it is a tough thing to talk about. And I believe the final line of his very long review, and I've been kind of reading bits of it and watching the film at the same time, he says, "If we are to see this film, we must see all of it and deal with all of it." And you know, he talks about how important it is to see how racist it is, really, in a way, and how D.W. Griffith didn't even realize how racist he was, you know. And he quotes many things where you kind of see that, you know, D.W. Griffith didn't hate black people, but he had a prejudice towards them that was just built in from the way that he grew up and where he grew up and the people who brought him up, and that was just a sign of the times. But, you know, I honestly don't know where this has come from, like why the Ku Klux Klan are being portrayed in this film as people who saved the South, you know, being portrayed heroically. I really don't know. And I guess part of me that wants to say, well, it just is what it is, it's racist, and move on. I kind of feel like, well, no, I should stop. I should find out why. I should look into it more. Maybe I will, but for now, I just need to carry on watching the film, I guess. and so I will. I'll play it. But just that title card there, the organisation that saved the South. I mean, oh, here we go. Here's the first shots of them with the white hoods and the horses with the white sheets. Their first visit to terrorise a Negro disturber and barn burner. And again, the black people are being portrayed now as kind of just, you know, vile people, you know. And a lot of them who are in these positions in the film of being kind of, you know, bad guys, I guess, bad people, are portrayed by white men in blackface. And it's very obvious as well. And in Roger Ebert's review, he talks about how D.W. Griffith wanted people to know that they were in blackface in a way, you know. And one of the excuses was that, you know, there weren't any Negro actors out there, and, you know, he just trusted working with white actors in blackface more than he did Negroes. Which, again, I don't know. But one thing that was fantastic about the film was that you see the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, who's in the film in quite a few scenes, and then we see the whole thing play out in the theatre when he was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, and it's even touted in the intertitles that this is a historical facsimile, that it is completely accurate to, you know, the theatre, the exact, you know, size and you know, accurate representation of the theatre itself and stuff like that. And that was a great scene, and that was the end of part one. And it was really interesting to be put in that kind of spot in history, and to know that it was that accurate. It almost makes you feel like you were there, or that you're seeing it on screen, you know. Like, it almost seems like it could be a documentary of the incident. And it made me want to watch JFK again, you know. I just find stuff like that in history very fascinating, with a morbid edge to the fascination, definitely. We shall crush the white South under the heel of the black South. Yeah, there's a lot of power struggle going on here, and blacks against, you know, whites and things like that, but like trying to give the blacks more freedom, but also, you know, I think that the head of the Stoneman family here, he kind of, from what I can understand from his motivations in the film, he wants to appear as if he cares about black people, but I think that ultimately he's just giving them power, or giving them kind of freedom for his own gain, for his own cause in a way. I might be completely off base there, but that's what it seems to me to be the case with the character of the head of the Stoneman family, who's you know, a big figurehead in the story. So the relationship between Elsie and Ben Cameron has kind of blossomed and stuff, and there was a great scene where they're together, and they haven't quite got together yet, but they're holding up a little bird, and they're both kissing the bird. She's kissing the beak, and he's kissing the back of the head. Then he sneaks in for a kiss on her cheek. You know, it was a really sweet kind of romantic moment that kind of stood out starkly from the rest of the images that I'm seeing on screen. But yeah, they're now together, and I think that things are about to get more complicated. But yeah, just some more thoughts on the film, I guess, as I'm going along. Yeah, that's about it really. So I will wrap this up in another hour and 4 minutes with the rest of the film done and my final thoughts. Okay, The Birth of a Nation. Final thoughts. That last hour really was, that was the kicker. That was the one that pushed it over the edge for me. Just horrifying stuff, really. I mean, I'd heard that it was bad in terms of the racism and stuff, but I mean, it's such a weird combination. I mean, the cinematography in this film, and the set pieces, and everything about the technical side of the film is masterful. And there was this one scene that really stood out to me, is when the Ku Klux Klan are riding to save the day, and you know, kill the black people. And the horses are riding across this hilltop, and the sun is coming out, and you see the kind of the figures amidst the sun and stuff, and it's a beautiful image of a horrifying act, you know, and it's a really weird juxtaposition for me. I'd have some notes down somewhere, but I'll try and remember them off the top of my head. Only a few things I noted down. One scene that stood out was I'm talking about the third half of the film now. The third half. See, watching Birth of a Nation makes you kind of forget how maths works. In the third part of the film, the third act, the last hour, there is a scene with this black man called Gus, I think his name was, and he's a white actor in blackface, and he's portrayed as this freed black man who kind of leching over the two Cameron sisters, the young girls, and one of them, Flora, she goes out to get some water against her brother Ben Cameron's wishes because it's not safe. She goes out nonetheless, and Gus goes after her, and he comes up to her and he says, "Look, and earlier on it was said that the black people had forced the vote so that black people and white people could now marry." And so he says, "I've been promoted to a general or a captain, and I want to marry you." And she's like, "No, don't touch me!" And she runs off, and she's like, "Oh my God, he's gonna kill me!" And he's running after her, and he's like, "I'm not gonna hurt you," And then she runs off anyway, and she goes to the edge of this cliff, and she jumps off the cliff in fright of this black man who's, And in a way, I don't know what the intention was there, but to me it seemed like that was a pretty good kind of summary of how racist people could be. Just the mere thought of a black man giving you any kind of attention in that way would be like, oh, well, obviously he wants to kill me or rape me or whatever. It was stark stuff, it really was. And then when Ben Cameron finds out that she's died and fallen off a cliff, he holds her, she dies in his arms basically. So the hunt is on for Gus to catch him, and the Ku Klux Klan, they get him. And that's probably the most striking image in the entire film, is when they're holding Gus and he's just there like that with his eyes open wide, and the whiteness against the blackface makeup is a haunting image. And they drag him off, and it says that he's been given a trial and justice has been served, but really they just kill him, and they throw his body outside the office of this man called Silas Lynch, who's this half-caste man who kind of becomes the kind of villain of the film as well. He wants to get all his black brothers kind of the equal vote and all that, and that's basically what the second half of the film is about black people get more power than it's being shown that they probably shouldn't, because with that power, I think there's a line that basically says that they were given power and they didn't really know, they didn't have the capacity to know what to do with it other than to do it badly. And you just have all these things where blacks are just portrayed as these violent, nasty people, and it was just disgusting to see. It was really horrible, but nothing more horrible than the final images of the film, which were filmed, shot, edited and presented in a brilliant way. The editing was fantastic, the film was fantastic, but it was the content that was just so horrible, where the Ku Klux Klan ride in to save the day, and there's they disarm the black men, they take all their guns away, and the black men run away. And there's a scene right at the end of the film. I mean, the kind of, again, the point was that black people want to vote, and because they had power over, a say in what happens in, the town or whatever, that's a bad thing. You can't have black, because obviously, I mean, there's even a moment where there's a big congregation, there's loads of black people there, and they're seen as just like drunks and idiots and stuff, and they get the vote so that they can marry white women and stuff, and it's like, and then there's an intertitle that says the poor white minority, and you just see like the small group of white men in the room who don't get a say in anything, and it's like, oh, poor white men, what was the other line? It was like, and so the white South was put under the heel of the black South, and also there's a point made towards the end of the film where the North and South of the US, and in terms of like the families who are on either side throughout the film, and they're kind of put against each other and stuff, they kind of what's the word? They kind of join forces again at the end, and it says something like the North and the South sides, they join again, they're united again to what's the word? To protect their Aryan birthright. Yeah, it is just stark stuff, and it's such a shame in a way. And yeah, and then right at the end of the film, I was going to say, there's a moment where it's like the next election, and it's like a little title called the next election, and you see all the black men kind of like, and they're like bent over like animals almost. They're looking around like, oh, can we vote? And then it just shows just a troop of Ku Klux Klan guys just pointing guns at them, and they go, oh no, let's just go inside. We won't vote. We won't vote. And I was just like, oh my god. Oh my fucking god. And then the end of the film was like, you know, there's some weird sequence with like a heaven and a hell and some multiple exposure effects, which were great. But again, it was just like, what's the message here, you know? And I was just like trying to look into it and stuff. And again, read that great Roger Ebert review about, you know, how we should see this in its entirety, but what does it mean, you know? It's a real tough film to kind of just quantify, really, in any way. And I looked at some of the special features, and there's one from 1930. The film was re-released 15 years after its initial premiere in 1930 with a new little title sequence, which is on this Blu-ray as well. But there's this introduction to the 1930 version between, I forget the guy's name now, it should say on here somewhere, Walter Huston and D.W. Griffith, and it's transferred in HD and stuff, and so you get to hear D.W. Griffith talk about the birth of a nation in sound. And it's this little segment where he's sitting down with Walter Huston, they got cigarettes and they're smoking, and yeah, oh yes, yes, in suits and stuff, and they're in this kind of smoking room. And there's these three kids, and they're kind of looking in, they're like, oh wow, is that D.W. Griffith? Sure is. Well, he looks alright. Of course he's alright, he made the birth of a nation. And it's like, wow, okay. So the kids are like, yeah, he's alright. And again, I don't know whether to judge D.W. Griffith for these things, and it was controversial when it came out, it's been controversial since. And I guess the more and more that we progress as a society in terms of racism, the more controversial this film is going to be 100 years after its release. But the way D.W. Griffith was saying, like, you know, he was brought up a Southerner, and he's kind of fondly reminiscing of his mother staying up all night to sew the white robes of the KKK, and it's like, man, he was a victim of his situation in his time, and he was obviously brought up to believe all the shit that is shown in this film, which again is adapted from a novel, I think, The Klansman. So, I don't know, what does it say here? It says, Griffith would attempt to make amends for the moral schism of this schizophrenic epic, that is a great way to put it, in his next film, Intolerance, but Birth of a Nation cannot and should not remain unseen or undiscussed. It is a great and terrible masterpiece. I'd agree with that. I think it is a masterpiece. I think it's a 10 out of 10 film, but the content is just reprehensible. You know, it's horrible. And I'll show you in a minute. There's this one shot in the film I just thought sums it all up. Sums up how wrong this film is, and it's a shot of your lead hero and the lead lady of the film, and it's like, wow, that's what the film is. You know, in fact, I'll show it to you now. Get it up on the TV. This was a shot of Ben Cameron and Elsie Stoneman, who, you know, throughout the whole film it's kind of leading up to them getting together and things like that, and here he is riding in to save the day in his creation, the KKK, and they celebrate, and, you know. So yeah, that's a very small example of what the film is like. Just the imagery that you see of those, you know, the white hoods and everything. It's just, yeah. So I think for me, what is almost even worse than just all the stuff that happens and the way that black people are portrayed is probably the fact that D.W. Griffith doesn't think this film is racist, and that the people who made the film didn't think it was racist. It shows the passive racism of 1915, you know, as much as it shows the, you know, it kind of removes the, I don't know, however they want to project, however D.W. Griffith and the people in 1915 wanted to project how, you know, this whole situation went down in the 1860s, 1870s. It just shows how they've warped history. They've tried to change it with this film, and it's been written that this isn't a propaganda film. You know, it was made because everyone believed that this was what happened, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's not the case. There's a lot of murky kind of waters for me with this film. You know, did they know deep down that this is not really the way that history went in the second part of this film? Or did they intentionally make it so that, you know, the KKK were the heroes? And as a matter of fact, the KKK was reinvigorated because of this film. And that is probably the deepest cut I can kind of say that is what makes this film horrible, you know. But now we're 100 years removed from it, you know, what does it really, you know, do, you know, besides offend people, you know. It's a real tough one to talk about and again quantify. You know, do I give it a 10 out of 10 because of how great the film is and how realistic the war scenes were and how the story was told and how innovative it was for the time in terms of filmmaking and the first massive epic, you know, I shouldn't say the first, but you know, one of the first epics, should we say. I don't know. I really don't know. Again, I feel like it both shows how wrong the whole situation, the KKK thing was in the in the 19th century, but also in the early 20th century, how blissfully unaware how racist they still were in 1915. And I even think in the 1930 introduction, D.W. Griffith says something like he kind of bigs up the KKK still, I think. And so yeah, I think the message in the film was terrible, but overall I think it is a great film. It's just one of those ones that you need to really kind of look into when you watch it, and you need to know the facts and kind of realize that this is not, you know, the truth. I mean, the first half of the film, for all I understand, is pretty much a historical document of the times of the Civil War, but then you get to the second part and it's just complete fabrication, from what I understand. So it's one of those films I think you must see before you die. It's one of those films I think that anyone just needs to see, just to kind of, again, educate yourself on what people were like in 1915, what people were like in, you know, the 19th century, and maybe it will inspire you to look into history a bit more deeply. It definitely has inspired me to do that. You know, maybe kind of have a more educated opinion on the whole kind of disparaging between the truth and the fiction of this film. So I really don't know where to rate it, honestly. It's hard. As a film, definitely a 10 out of 10. But do I take points off because of the message? I don't know. Maybe, again, I agree that it's a film that shouldn't be shied away from. It's a film that shouldn't be put down. And I think it's great that it's available on Blu-ray. I think it's educational. You know, I think it's important. And it blows my mind as well that we're 100 years out from this film, you know, and we can have it on a disc, you know, in high definition on Blu-ray. It's pretty damn cool. But the film itself is anything but cool, you know. So there we go, Birth of a Nation. Those are my kind of initial thoughts, and yeah, I wouldn't offend anyone. I can't see how I would have, because I'm completely against the things that were shown in the film. But I have to respect the artistry in making the film from a technical standpoint. The actual message and content of the film, I'm not so sure. And it kind of upset me as well at the end. And what upset me more was seeing the 1930 introduction and seeing how, again, D.W. Griffith was talking about how his mother was, you know, sewing the KKK robes, and I feel like it's just one of those things where maybe, and this is complete conjecture, but maybe D.W. Griffith thought that this was what happened, you know, this is what happened in those years, and he was trying to present the best possible version of the truth. I mean, there's moments in the film where the intertitles say that, you know, wouldn't it be great to, I mean, I'm paraphrasing heavily here, wouldn't it be great to be in a world without war? It's a very anti-war message, but it's just a shame that the bad guys in the film were really not the bad guys, you know. And it's the same thing around the entire world. There are good people from every corner of the world, there are bad people from every corner of the world, but the black people in this film were generalized and, you know, just painted in a horrible light, you know. That's another thing I want to talk about, because there's a couple of black people in the film, well, quite a few, but there's I think two of them maybe, or at least one I can remember that is a part of one of the families, I forget which one now, and they kind of help against the bad black people, and they're referred to as the faithful souls. The faithful souls, because they're faithful servants of the white people. And again, it shows you that mentality and how prevalent it was in those days in 1915, and I'm sure, of course, to an even bigger degree in the 19th century. So if you haven't seen it, watch it, educate yourself, try and enjoy it for what it is. I definitely, again, had appreciation for the filmmaking side of it, but it made me feel a little bit too uneasy, and especially the introduction from D.W. Griffith was a bit hard to swallow for me. Is it one I'd rewatch again? I think so, at some point in my life, not anytime soon. But, you know, and am I glad that I have it? I think I am, because it is a piece of history, and again, it's something that can educate. I mean, you know, who knows, maybe in 20 years' time I'll have kids and I can show them this as a, you know, an example of, you know, how fucked up humans can be sometimes, you know what I mean? This is, yeah, definitely an interesting film, an important film. And an inflammatory epic. I mean, the schizophrenic epic is a great one, because it really is a tale of two films, part one and part two, and night and day. You know, part one, I was enjoying the character of Ben Cameron and his potential romance with Elsie, and by the end of it, when they're together and she's hugging him in the big white hood, I just thought, oh, get away, you know. I grew to just despise that character, and You know, maybe it's a good message of how someone seemingly good can go down a really dark, bad path, and how, you know, at the end of the film, you can watch this to the end and think, right, that wasn't the way that this story should have ended or did end or however, and it's a cautionary tale maybe, I don't know. So yeah, hard one to talk about. There are 7 Civil War short films directed by Griffith also included on this, and I think I'm going to watch some of them because I want to check them out. I know that Ryan watched one for his marathon as well, so I might check some of those out and include these in the marathon later on. But for now, that is The Birth of a Nation, and in fact I've got a few more things I want to say about it. Yeah, screw it, let's get into it. Oh my god, just have a look at this. This is a poster that's on the inside of the Blu-ray. I mean, just look at that, how it paints the KKK in such a heroic light, and I know exactly why this is put behind the disc and not on the front cover, because it'd be a bit too much for, you know, the 21st century, I think. But I love the poster of the front cover, you know, the Abraham Lincoln assassination, which is a great scene in the film. And I read as well in the booklet that they had people who were there when it happened to kind of confirm kind of the facts. So again, it's really weird that the first part, the attention to detail and having everything historically accurate, in fact, probably the whole film, was so, you know, OCD to a point. You know, they were like, we got the measurements of the theatre exact and everything, but then when it came to the black people and the KKK, it gets completely twisted. Yeah, there's a load of facts here about the film that are from a 1915 souvenir program published to commemorate what they called the most stupendous and fascinating motion picture drama created in the United States. I'll read a few of them. There are over 5,000 distinct scenes / shots in The Birth of a Nation. 18,000 people and 3,000 horses were utilised in making the film. Mr. Griffith worked for 8 months without a let-up to complete the picture. The approximate cost of the production was $500,000, which at the time I'm sure was not even a small fortune, you know. 5,000 works and reports on the history of the Civil War and the periods immediately leading up to and following the Great Conflict was searched for authentic data. They talk about how everything used in the war scenes were kind of exact replications and reproductions of the artillery and stuff used at the time. Again, the assassination of President Lincoln at the Ford's Theatre in Washington was reproduced to the smallest detail. So yeah, there were witnesses who even were there to advise on it and stuff. What else is there that's interesting? Night photography was perfected for the first time to secure battle scenes in the dark. This detail cost $5,000. Specially prepared shells exploded at a cost of $80 each in the battle scenes. A commissary and 2 hospital corps were maintained while the pictures were being taken. Not a human life was lost, which again highlights how dangerous some of those war scenes probably were, you know, blanks or not. The condensed production represents 12,000 feet of film. Nearly 200,000 feet of film was originally taken. Think about that. Think about that. That's crazy. So that's like 20 times what you saw. So what, 20... we're talking probably about 60 hours worth of footage was shot for this. But anyway, there we go. I got nothing more to say about it, really. It was an experience. I'm glad I've seen it. I enjoyed certain parts of it, and I again admired the artistry of making the film, the technicality of it, and I'm just repeating myself at this point, so there we go. Birth of a Nation. I need to kind of let my emotions settle down a little bit, and hopefully my blood will stop boiling just a little bit, and we'll carry on with this marathon. So I guess I'm just going to come in here and kind of round this off. Is The Birth of a Nation a film you must see before you die? Yes, absolutely. And I kind of went into it, but I mean, I feel like this film is important because, like the things I was saying, you know, it's a film that shows you how wrong someone can get it in terms of just the whole idea of race and the racist stuff that goes on in the film. You look at it now and it is absolutely shocking. It's like, I can't believe this got made. And I think it's important to know that was happening, and that it was happening, you know, in the 1910s, and you know, just I really feel like this is an important historical document. It is a film you must see before you die. It's not an easy watch, but it's an impeccably well made film with some shocking imagery and ideas and ideals that will really make you think. And I think that's an important thing, and it will make you confront the reality of what the mindset was, I think, for some people towards black people and towards history and distorting history 100 years ago. So I think it's an incredibly important historical document, and it's well worth seeing, even if it is maybe a bit of a slog to some people. It wasn't to me because the film was made so well, but there we go. It is a film you must see before you die, absolutely. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you with the next video.